Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to round 7 of the PSGL F4 Championship. We are back in Italy after we had Monza last Monday. We are here in Imola today, and my name is Felix. I'm going to be a commentator for tonight, and I am once again joined by Jake. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. It's great to be back in Italy. Yeah, after it served up an absolute treat last week. Drama aplenty, so Imola's got a tough act to follow, but I still anticipate we're in for a good one. And yeah, it's very Italian weather at the moment. Blue skies up ahead, and we're getting some cars out on track.
Yeah, first one out on track is NSX Macho. In case you're wondering why there is that PlayStation symbol next to everyone's name, uh, for some reason we had crossplay enabled in the lobby. That is why you'll see that PlayStation thingy for everyone there. I hope it doesn't distract you all too much. In case something is wrong with the sound, make sure to let us know in the chat. Or just general feedback in the chat in terms of sound and volume would be quite nice. My TV is about to turn off. Don't do that. Thank you. All right. Yeah, Jake, you've informed yourself about the many incidents that have happened last week, and would you let us know what exactly came out of the stewards' decisions?
Yeah, I was anticipating it wasn't going to be a quiet week in the stewards after last Monday. Good race. There was some plenty of good racing, but there was a few incidents as well. Basically, the Gian, who I'm just looking, I'm trying to scroll with my eyes. He's not actually racing tonight, but he got a 5 second penalty added to his race time for last week for hitting Kieran up the back into turn one. Which we saw plain as day. I kind of anticipated that one. And Roby, who is here and will not be setting a lap time in qualifying because he's got a qualifying ban and also a 5 second time penalty for his race time tonight. And that's for the start finish line incident with Matteo, where he just basically didn't seem to notice that the other car was there and it caused quite a big collision. So yeah, the stewards have had their say. I personally can't really disagree with their verdicts, and it only really impacts on Roby for this evening. But it could impact quite heavily because this isn't really the kind of track where you want to be starting at the back. I wouldn't have said.
No, and what you've mentioned it. By the way, Macho is coming across the line for the first lap of this quali session. It's a 1:15.2, which I reckon is going to be beaten at some point in this quali session. Next one to cross the line is going to be Milan. Yeah, you've already mentioned a bit of the characteristics about this track. It's not too easy to overtake around here, and you've just told me before the start of the stream you're not a big fan of this track. So, do you think that we will see a lot of racing here tonight, or is it just going to be a more strategy-related race and penalty-related race? Because obviously track limits could become a big issue here as well.
I think penalties will definitely play a part. It's easy to pick up a few penalties to track extending around this track. I think as well that a lot of the overtakes we'll see will be down the start finish straight, which isn't really a straight actually. It's quite curvy for a straight, but it's a long DRS zone which gives you a good opportunity into turn one. What I will be looking out for is maybe some a bit more creative overtaking around the rest of the lap because aside from turn one and maybe onwards from there aren't too many obvious and clear overtaking spots.
Yeah, that's the issue about this Italy track. It's basically in terms of the difficulty of the overtakes. It's the exact opposite of the other Italian track we've got on the calendar. Monza probably the easiest track to overtake on in comparison to Imola, where you really need to set up your overtake really nicely out of the final two corners, and where you need some really good straight line speed in order to even be able to have a chance. And turn one isn't that heavy, isn't a braking zone that is that heavy that you can actually dive it from very far back, because it's a relatively quick fourth gear, fifth gear corner, or chicane, I should rather say, where it's not really that wide, so it's really tight. And we barely see two cars going side by side through there without making any contact, and that could be an issue then in the race in terms of overtaking. But we'll have to wait and see. Especially the start is going to be even more hectic with that, because the drivers just know that they have to make their moves as soon as possible. And if they see a gap on lap 1, they're going to use it.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes qualifying very, very important. So, Macho set the opening lap time of qualifying, and surprisingly, as of yet, hasn't been toppled. Latest slotting in second, Henry third, and then you've got, we haven't mentioned on the championship standings just yet, but you've got the two main championship protagonists, Giroffu and Kieran, fifth and sixth after their opening runs. Thankfully, through chance, I have recently commentated on a race at Imola, so I can probably say, roughly speaking, you'd expect pole to be in the late 14s. I'd be shocked if we didn't have one of these drivers getting into the 14s by the end of this session. So that 1:15.2 is a good opening benchmark, but I'd say it's also very beatable.
Yeah, Roby, by the way, has already retired from this session because of the quali ban. Has he gone out though to put his setup on? I didn't quite see. Did you?
I don't believe he did. No, I think he just retired.
All right. Hopefully it still works, but it's just Cody. So I would have just, if I was him, I would have just quickly gone out, said just not set a lap, but just do your out lap, so it saves the setup, so you're not on the stock setup. And yeah, we've got Joey on his first lap. That is going to be, it's not invalid, but he's gone very, very wide. I'm actually surprised to see that we haven't had that many invalid laps so far.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks where you have to push the limits really to get the best lap time. You've got to use as much racetrack as you can, and in Joey's case, a little bit more besides. So, yeah, we haven't seen too many invalid laps yet, but I do feel like a few drivers are struggling to get to grips with this track. There's a little bit of difference between the lap times. It's quite a short lap as well. Joey, with his very wide moment, does a 16.1, so I think he probably scrubbed off so much speed when he went off the track. That's probably the reason it didn't invalidate.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who is on a lap. It looks like Laters is on a lap in his Red Bull. I quickly need to adjust the sound because I just turned the volume up for the game a bit too much, I think, now. Because it was very quiet from the not on board, but on board is really loud. But yeah, it looks like Laters is out on a lap in his Red Bull. And that looked like it should have been in an invalidation, but it wasn't. I just hope that we don't have a mistake in the lobby, that it's not set to strict, because otherwise we would need to restart, because I had some occasions here and there where I thought drivers were gonna get their lap times invalidated, but they didn't. So I'm just hoping, can we check actually in the settings? Is it...
Not too sure. Giroffu, though, is about to do a very good lap time, I'm thinking, and he goes on to provisional pole at 1:15.1. So Giroffu missed last week's race and lost the championship to Kieran as a result of that. 8 points adrift of him at the moment, but he fires the first shots in qualifying. That's a very nice lap. So and Latest went into P2 as well, so Matcher down to third.
Yeah, Laters with a really solid lap. Macho, though, it has just improved on his first sector time. Kieran, in the meantime, goes into second place, 6,000 of a second off Giroffu. Macho, though, with a purple first sector, coming around the second sector now. And once again, that looked like an invalidation, but it wasn't. I'm not sure if we can check, because it says formation lap. Oh, corner cutting is on strict, though, so I don't really get it, but alright. I thought that was invalid, but looks like the game is a bit more generous now. It looked like a bit of a messy exit there out of the chicane that you hate, you said, for Macho coming down into the final two corners. The penultimate corner is a really tricky one because it's a downhill and you have to brake a bit earlier than you'd expect to do, and it looks like Macho has lost too much time with that little mistake he had, and he comes straight back into the pit lane. And let's see if anyone is still out on a lap. Papi seems to be out. No, he's not on a lap. Jaum, though, is pushing really hard through this part of the track. So, yes, he has invalidated now. so we know that it's definitely working and it's not glitched. Let's see, LRB goes into 7th place. Got that from him there.
Yeah, Marcel just got a few corners left to go, and he's on a better lap. Currently down in P14, so we'll see if he can push it into the top 10. Missed the apex a little bit at the final corner. That might cost him a little bit of time. But up to the line he goes, and yeah, P7, 15-3. It's all very close at the front, and I think Henry as well moved up into 3rd, and he's very close to the front row.
Yeah, keep an eye on KK, who has improved by 2 tenths by the end of the middle sector. Comes around the final corner now, slightly loses the rear end, but it should be good enough to improve, and he does by just over 2 tenths and goes into 6th. That makes it a full AlphaTauri 3rd row for the moment.
Yeah, some good improvements going on the second attempts, and the lap time's coming down. I still think we are going to see a 14 by the end of the session, but we're still a 10th and a bit adrift of that at the moment. And just trying to see if there's anyone currently on a lap. I think Gustav's just started a flying lap. He might be the only one at the moment who's actually pushing, based on what I can see.
Yeah, I flicked through everyone, but I couldn't find someone apart from Gustav.
And he's a quarter of a second up in Sector 1, so he's finding time already.
Yeah, the Red Bull obviously in real life absolutely superior, but here he invalidates in that really quick left-hander, which is very easy to do, and it looks like the hat of Diogo Silva has just started a lap as well. Coming around turns 1, 2 and 3 now, and then up into turn 4, which is not exactly flat out, because the right-hander after that is really, really tight, and then we've got the slowest corner of the entire track probably. Oh, actually, it might be a bit quicker than the chicane. I'm trying to get my track map up because I forgot to do that.
Oh, Diogo Silva having a huge moment, and he has gone fully round. Well, half round at least. He had a few attempts to fight that spin off, but yeah, couldn't quite manage to do so. And we have got quite a few drivers now on flying laps, so we'll see if there's going to be any significant improvements on these latest attempts. I'm just following Macho around to see what his first sector's like, but it doesn't matter because he is invalidated on the exit.
Joey has just gone into 10th with his lap. It looks like no one else is really out on a lap except from Block, who comes around the final corner now, and he is about to improve, I think. Yes, he is, but he doesn't improve his position. You should be expecting a very close grid here around such a short track as Imola, and we do have a very close grid at the moment. 1.2 seconds only in between P1 and P18. Girafu is slightly down on his time right now.
Yeah, trying to stretch. I think we've got a purple first sector from Simon. Down in 7th, he's improved. Girafu will not be improving his lap time, but Simon, a very good opening sector. If he can keep that going, he could push himself up right to the front of a grid here. What's his second sector looking like? Yeah, still looks very strong here. If he keeps this going, this could be a new pole sitter. And first man maybe dipping into the 14s or at least getting into the 15-0 margin. Not a driver I personally would have expected potentially to get onto provisional pole as well, but we'll see if he can hook it up around his last few corners. It looks pretty smooth to me.
Yeah, right now we're just waiting for him to cross the line, and it's going to be 5th. Not even 1.5 tenths off pole position right now, but he destroys that 3rd row for the AlphaTauri drivers. One of them, Macho, has just invalidated in the first sector, or at the end of the first sector, I should rather say. Now I've got my track map up by the way.
Oh no, Kieran went too wide, has invalidated his lap. He was improving. He was a 10th up for the first sector. He's 2 tenths up for the middle, but that's not going to count now with that invalidation.
What is he going to do now though? Because he hasn't got that much ERS left, and he hasn't got that much time left. I don't think he can go into the pit lane, fit a new set of tyres, and then go out again. So it's either over for him. Yeah, I think it's over.
he's
or
gonna
maybe
try and
only, yeah, only just. It's not a long lap around here, so he might only just be able to set another one. It's gonna be
got
very tight though.
we've got Macho back in the pits as well. If it's going to be tight for Kieran, it's going to be even tighter for Macho. This is, I feel like a few of these guys may have timed these runs a little bit wrong.
Yeah, I think the big issue is just that Kevin didn't expect to invalidate, obviously, but generally the timing was just a bit off because usually you would want to set your lap time as late as possible. Amoy has only just entered the pits. Same with Simon. Very, very odd timing from some of these guys out here. Henry and Giroffu have made every decision right so far, I think, because they are out on track on their out laps and they're going to be able to set a lap right at the end.
Yeah, that's worked out perfectly for them. Kieran is still not showing us out on track, so I think
He's in
he's
the
coming
pits. He's
out.
at the end of the pit lane. Don't know if he'll make it. It's going to be really tight. He really has to push. He really has to push on this one. He basically has to do 2 quali laps in a row now in order to make it across the line. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll focus on Giroffu now for first because he's the man sitting on provisional pole now, and he's going to be the first man of those top guys to be setting their final laps, just ahead of Henry, who's behind him, and the Alfa Romeo of LRB. And let's look at the lap from Giroffu from the onboard down to 5th for the better traction, and out of turns 1, 2 and 3 he goes, and then into the next really quick chicane, which becomes a lot slower in the right-hander here. First sector split says he's 3,000ths of his best lap so far. That could still be an opportunity for him to improve. If he made just that tiny little mistake in the middle sector or in the final sector, he could still be improving. He doesn't invalidate through turn 7, I think that is. No, turn 9, sorry. And he loses the rear end coming out of turn 12. That might have cost him a little bit. There is no sector split showing up on the top right, and it looks like he's gone into oh, he's left the session. I think he might have lost connection. Kieran hasn't made it across the line. Latest, so the only two guys inside the top 5 to still set their laps are Henry and Latest. Henry currently coming down into the final 2 corners, goes a bit deep into the penultimate corner. Around the final corner he comes now across the line. What is it going to be? Can he take pole position away from Giroffu? Yes, he can! 32,000ths of a second, but Latest is still out there, and he's improving by 2/10ths at the moment, and has got purple in the middle sector. Red Bull could spoil the party here for the Williams of Henry.
Gustav goes P6. Good late effort from him, but his Red Bull teammate could be about to steal the show. Round the final corner, I don't think anything's going to annihilate us here. Am I going to see that 1 minute 14 that I was sure we were going to see? Yes, I am. Wow, that's an incredible lap. A 14.8, and that's not just taken pole, that's well and truly smashed the competition out the park.
Yeah, that came basically out of nowhere because, I was expecting Giroffu maybe to be the first one to get into the 14s, but no, Henry couldn't quite do it. Giroffu left the session, so I think he had internet issues once again, as he already had some in Mexico, I remember. And then out of nowhere, there's a 1:14.8 set by Laters in his Red Bull, and that was a great lap in the end to secure pole position for the Red Bull driver by more than 2.5 of a second. That is really impressive. So that is your grid for the upcoming race now. Now I quickly have to check the Discord if anything has been said about Giroffu, if he's able to join back, because it would be a shame if he wasn't.
Yeah, hopefully he can rejoin the lobby and there are no such problems. That would definitely be ideal. And yeah, look at how close the grid was until Laters put in that astonishing final effort. Henry might have thought he got pole position. If there's one sort of shocking qualifying looking further down the grid, who I look at and think he's out of position compared to where we usually see him. I have to say, Samba down in 16th. Usually one of the front running guys in terms of pace, but don't know if it's Imola or just a bad qualifying session. But yeah, Samba really struggling, and I would have expected him to be a lot higher up than 16th.
Yeah, well, he has got a lot of work to do now, and especially around Imola. That isn't too easy, and we've got a full wet track. That looks like extreme tire conditions. And that makes okay, that could make Imola a lot more interesting. It's going to be even more difficult to overtake now, but it's going to be even more chaotic than it usually would be as well, with full wet conditions now. I can't remember the last time I can't remember one race I had on this game, I think, where it was full wet conditions, where I was commentating. Giraffe was joined, which is a really good thing. I hope he can jump in his Mercedes now, because his Mercedes is still standing in the second row of the grid. And yeah, the question is now, obviously, who has gone for a wet setup?
Yeah, and it does make you wonder as well. Some of the guys, so maybe Samba down in 16th, maybe he has gone very much towards a wet setup. But the only problem with that is, of course, starting way down in 16th, he's got a lot of overtaking to do, and that's going to be really tricky. So, it's almost like you have to compromise it slightly. You want the car to handle well in these conditions, but you don't want to be so far down the grid that you don't really have anything to use your pace with.
Yeah, usually in the wet it's even more difficult to get past, but there's usually a lot more chaos than there is in the dry as well. So the lights are coming on now, and we're up to 5 red lights in Imola. And we are underway. It looks like Latest got away quite well. It looks like Zarafu is not in his Mercedes just yet. Henry stays in P2 for the moment. Henry has to defend himself, though, from Zarafu in P3, who seems to be back in his car. Kieran tries to go around the outside of his championship rival. Can he make it into turn 2? He makes the move stick. Good job by him. So Zarafu dropped down a place. We've got an AlphaTauri of KK really losing the rear end. It looks like everything has been more or less clean. The two AlphaTauris fighting now, coming down into turn 4, and Macho goes past his teammate. Apart from that, it looks quite clean, especially at the back. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, but it's actually a very clean start. There's still a lot of drivers making up positions, despite how clean it was. We've got McLaren of Milan having a few issues, and Samba already up to 10th. He's had a cracking start from 16th on the grid.
Oh, many drivers going off. Look at that. Look at that turn 9. Really slippery for the drivers. It looks like everyone is trying to get used to these conditions. Yeah, we've got drivers going off left, right and centre. You can see the predicted pit stop strategy, but that is obviously just when the race is going right until the end in that same state, which I'm not quite sure if it is, but it looks like everyone's struggling with grip quite a lot in this race so far, and it's just a thing of getting used to it.
That's Henry very wide at a penultimate corner, and he just sort of parked it back in front of Giraffe, which has created a bit of a train behind him.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the top two to pull away, and I think an AlphaTauri went a bit wide. I think I might be Macho once again. And Henry keeping hold of third place, but he's lost so much time. And Kieran,
I think something's happened. He has dropped down to 17th now. Got people in the pit lane. Oh, look at that. The Ferrari of Joey is going 3 wide, and there's a McLaren going off. Joey's going off both in the gravel into turn 1, and that had to go wrong, especially in the rain. And look at the Haas and Joey once again. Joey seemed to have caused a bit of chaos there. Giraffe has dropped a place against KK now.
He's lost connection again.
Yeah, he's out.
That's not the way that you'd want it to go, really. It's nothing he can do about it. Hopefully he can get back in his car, but he's going to lose so many positions.
Look at all that was a Williams going off. That was Henry. Henry lost the place. I remember that was exactly the place where George Russell probably lost his first F1 points. KK goes off the track as well. It looks like everyone is struggling quite heavily at the moment in this race, and nobody's really getting used to it. And there we've got a bit of a concertina effect here coming down into the chicane, and it looks like the conditions are really, really tricky. Everyone is really struggling at the moment, apart from Kieran and Laters, who are just pulling off into the distance.
Yeah, they'll be loving all this that's going on behind them. Henry's had a few errors now, but he's still somehow keeping hold of that P3, so he's managing to keep cars behind him. But yeah, you see that gap being created between second and third. I have to say, the outstanding was Roby did do the fastest lap, but now beaten by Jam. So interesting to see who's got the pace in these conditions. As we've got, I was about to say Sambas for me has had probably the most impressive start from 16th up to 8th. So he's I wonder if he did go more towards a wet setup in that McLaren, as we've got Giroffu going back in his car and immediately having a massive moment.
Oh, and look at that up front. Henry once again goes wide, and that gives everyone the chance to go past him. It's a bit chaotic from that camera angle. Macho's trying to go for a move around the outside in the hairpin, but he can't quite make it stick. Now there's Amboy on the inside of Macho coming into the fast left hand. There's a bit of contact with Henry as well. Macho has to go off the track to avoid Samba now on the outside of him, but into that double right hand, it's going to be difficult to make the move stick. Everyone's going off the track once again in turn 12, and there's a bit of contact. Block touches the rear end of Samba, who have both made great starts, and it looks like those two are feeling pretty comfortable on this track right now, and there's a lot of chaos going on at the moment.
Tell you what, this is all we needed to make Imola right edge of your seat excitement. Just a bit of rain and absolute carnage is ensuing here. Later still leading the way. I have to say, that's a great effort, given that I thought he may have gone more towards a dry setup.
And Samba's gone wide, Samba's gone wide, and there goes Block then. That is his 11th position gained on lap 4. Wow. He's gone from P18 up to P7. Henry's just been passed by Macho. Henry has seemed to be struggling. Samba goes back past Block now. That might be down to an illegal overtake because of the yellow flags. Giroffu goes off the track in turn 1. And now he tries to get past Marcel, who has also had a bit of a struggle out of turn 2 then. It looks like, Giroffu's lagging for me a little bit as well.
Yeah, you just don't know where to look at the moment. There's action everywhere, and I've been kind of going away from the lead battle because it looked like later supported away, but all of a sudden Kieran's right behind him again. So I think everyone's making mistakes. It's just who can make the fewest amount of mistakes might end up winning this race, because this is so tough, and Kieran's got a great exit here. Might go for the overtake. Is he?
Just look at the position changes as well. Everyone outside the top 10 has either kept position or lost positions, and everyone inside the top 10, apart from Henry, has gained positions or held position. That is incredible to see. And now we have a proper battle for P1, it looks like. And KK is also joining the fight at the moment. It looks like he's got some solid pace. Let's go on board with Kieran, who didn't get the greatest exit. Milan is the first one to pick up a penalty. He's down in 18th, though. So for the moment, it won't matter for him. Kieran is trying to get past Macho Pitts and retires from the session. Okay.
Yeah, that's a little bit confusing. I mean, if he had damage, I don't really understand that one all too much. Keke setting the fastest lap of the race. He's got some serious pace now.
Once again, Samba goes off. You just can't go on board with everyone for more than 10 seconds without somewhere else, having to switch to someone else because something is happening there. It's just a lot of chaos right now. We've got the group of the top 3 at the minute. Then we've got Envoy sitting in a lonely P4. And then we've got a big train from Henry in P5 all the way down to, basically P16.
Yeah, and that was a wide moment again for Samba. I almost wonder if he's got a bit of damage because he's had a few off-track excursions of late. But,
look at that. Kieran has just taken the lead from Laters, who once again struggled out of turn 12, it looks like. And right before the chicane, it looks like Kieran has gone past and is now up in the lead.
Yeah, he threatened that on the last lap, didn't he? And once again, Laters not getting the best of exits and Kieran grabbing the lead. And it's probably important that he does so because I think he's probably a bit worried about Keke behind, because he's showing some good pace, and I wonder if he'll be able to follow Kieran through very shortly. Latest, for the first time, loses the lead, and it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that. We've got battles going on plenty further down. We've got Block and Roby fighting over P7. Got to say, Roby's another one who's had a fantastic first few laps on the back of a grid, all the way up to 7th. He's making the most of salvaging things after that qualifying ban.
Yeah, it's just very difficult to keep up with everything that is going on for the moment, and at some point we'll have to talk about pit stops as well, but obviously we have no idea what the weather is going to be like in the next 10 laps. So maybe the rain will get lighter, maybe the rain just stays that way for the rest of this race. But at the moment it looks like Kieran is able to pull a bit of a gap, but not extremely. But now there is latest favourite corner coming up, turn 12, which he now manages to do quite well, but he still lost a tenth to Kieran in that corner. Looks like he's not really that big of a fan of turn 12, latest is, and at the moment he's struggling a little bit to really keep up, because 8 tenths is actually quite a lot.
Oh, huge moment for Henry, and that's going to allow Samba on the exit of a chicane to steal P5. Henry, we've seen have a couple of moments, and that one at the exit of a chicane, he just tries to get the power.
Oh, wow! That was incredibly close. He's very lucky to not have hit the car in front. That would have definitely resulted in a penalty. But he's ready. And look at that latest. It's just gone. It's just been passed by KK around the inside goal. Around the outside goes the AlphaTauri, and into P2 he goes. So latest seems to be really struggling in these conditions right now, and he doesn't feel that comfortable as the others. Maybe his setup isn't working as well as in the rain as it was in the dry. And it looks like Amboy is gaining some time as well.
Yeah, we talked about a setup compromise before the race, and maybe it's just gone a little bit too biased towards the dry, as Roby with a very nice overtake down the inside of a hairpin, and mine's way past Samba into P5, and he's a few seconds off the lead still, but Roby is one to keep an eye on. He's absolutely flying in these conditions.
Yeah, he's really looking strong right now in that Mercedes. And I don't think we will have to wait too long until we see Amboy being right at the back of Latest. Look at that. Latest is already a second behind KK. KK has gone into that 1 second window of Kieran in first once again. He's now only 7.5 tenths behind. Obviously, we don't have the DRS in those conditions, but still, it looks like KK has got some good pace. He already showed some decent pace in Monza last week, as Jaume is trying to get past his teammate Henry down the inside into the penultimate corner, and he makes the move stick in the final one. Solid move there. No! There's been a bit of contact between the two teammates.
Oh, Claire Williams will be absolutely fuming at that. It was just he had the inside line, but it meant he had a slow exit. Did Jaume on the exit of the final corner, and Henry just got caught out by it and ran into the back of him. Oh, and that's just a real messy incident between the two Williams cars. Jaume might have got away with it to an extent, but Henry definitely hasn't. He's in the pits.
Yeah, and look at KK. KK is catching up more and more. I'm really impressed with him so far in this race. He's shown some great pace in that AlphaTauri. He's already beating the big brother team of the Red Bull. And right now his pace is looking really good. Obviously after his second place in Monza, where he probably would have wanted that race win, he's looking really strong here in Imola once again. It looks like Italy just really suits him.
Yeah, and Latest mentioned his struggles in these conditions. He's just picked up a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings, so his struggles continue, and he's going to have his mirrors full of Ferrari very shortly as well with Amboy. And yeah, I'm just interested to see particularly how Roby can sort of catch up to these guys in front. We've got a yellow flag.
Yeah, that's Joey.
Yeah, Joey.
Has he hit the wall, or has he managed to stay out the wall?
Not sure, but just a quick little note here that Henry has just, after his incident with his teammate, has gone onto the intermediate tyres.
Oh yeah, I didn't even check. Yeah, we should keep an eye.
Oh, Kieran's had a huge moment, and that's given Keke an opportunity, but he sort of parked it in front of him, and Keke had nowhere to go. But Kieran having a huge moment now out of sort of turn 2, turn 3, and yeah, a little bit of vulnerability there in the championship leader. And Keke right now, I have to say, looks a little bit more comfortable than Kieran does.
Yeah, really interesting fight now. It looks like it's becoming a 4-way fight for the race lead now, as Latest is not too far behind KK now either. So it's looking a bit better than it was before for Laters. Maybe he can still hold on to that P3. At the moment, the podium would still be pretty good. But for the moment, he can just look at the rear wing of that AlphaTauri car ahead of him.
Yeah,
and it looks like it has settled down a little bit. Drivers are getting into their rhythms, so a few less mistakes we see now. Not every single corner someone is off, and the gaps are extending a bit more now. Apart from the gap in between P1 and P2, we can see KK is using his overtake button as well. He's using his battery charge that he's got, but he's not close enough just yet. And it looks like, the inters are not working for Henry, by the way. Henry's losing a lot of time.
Yeah, probably thought I'll take a gamble given the current conditions.
Joey also on inters. Also has just spun now.
Yeah, and the leaders are going to be coming up to him shortly, so hopefully there's no issues there.
He's going to go
yeah, which is good. Keke all over the back of Kieran. And looking, and Amwoy also over the back of Latus as well. Latus just becoming slightly detached. And just keep an eye on Roby and Samba as well. They've sort of broken away from that real huge cluster of chaos that was happening behind this leading group before, and they are just starting to make a few inroads into the top four in front. So Roby and Samba could be ones to keep an eye on.
Yeah. It looks like those two are quite confident and comfortable with these conditions at the moment. Henry is retired in the pit lane, so there isn't going to be a safety car, which is good. And we've got Simon going past Marcel. Marcel has now dropped another place. He was in 9th, right behind his teammate just a couple of laps ago, and he's now down into 12th. So it looks like he is struggling quite a lot at the moment. And look at the tank sniper that Gustav has just had out of the final corner. Looks like everyone is more or less keeping the car on the track, but they are all not 100% comfortable with these conditions, which I absolutely understand, because it is really tricky and you have to be aware and fully concentrated in every single corner. Otherwise, you're going to fly off into the gravel or into the grass, and in these conditions you just can't afford a single mistake. Otherwise, it's game over for you. And those guys inside the top four are doing a pretty good job, especially KK and Kieran. And Kieran seems to have just become a bit more confident in the last couple of laps. He's extended the gap to KK now.
Yeah, and that wasn't a good exit again for Latus out of that corner. He's still having a few issues there. Amwoy all over the back of him, but can't find a way through. Yeah, and that's the thing. You get you start to get comfortable in these conditions, and then you can, of course, have a tendency to get too confident and make an error that way. So it's, his driver's definitely not out of the woods yet, and you get the feeling that an error could still occur, even these front guys. But Kieran, like you say, is suddenly finding a little bit of confidence out there. He's just done his personal best lap time by 0.6 of a second. So he's just found some real confidence on that lap, and we'll see if that carries on. But up until Kieran's lap, I'd say Roby was the fastest driver on track, but Kieran taking that one away.
Yeah, but you got to mention that Kieran hasn't got a lot of ERS. It looks like he's used it quite a lot in the last couple of laps. He's just got around 10 to 12%, while KK is still above 25, it looks like, or 30. And Latus is the one out inside the top four that has got by far the most amount of ERS, around 70%, and he's not really using much. Amwoy is using quite a lot. He's around 10% on the battery charge, so it looks like Latus is just right now not willing to use that battery charge that he's got left.
Now he's trying to play the long game again. He doesn't get a great exit out of that corner. He's thankful that the straight isn't longer, and of course no real help for Amwoy to try and get through. Jirofu picks up a penalty. I feel a bit sorry for Jirofu, really, because the connection issues he's had have kind of destroyed his race and put him you'd say almost put him out of position, really, compared to where he should be.
Yeah, it's really sad to see. By the way, now Kieran hasn't used that much ERS on that lap, and he's lost some time once again to KK. So I think the gap he just pulled within those 1 or 2 laps was really down to the battery he used. Because KK once again inside that 1 second window. That only matters, of course, in the dry when you've got the DRS enabled. At the moment, that 1 second window isn't really worth that much for the AlphaTauri driver, but obviously it pressurizes the driver ahead a bit more when the car behind is really close instead of the car behind being 2 or 3 seconds back.
That's it. It automatically puts you under more pressure knowing you've got a car right up behind you and you can't afford to make a mistake, otherwise you will lose a position. The top two are really starting to drop Latus and Amoy a little bit now. 2 second gap opened up between Keke and Latus. And Latus is saving his ERS, but you almost feel like he could do with using some just to bring him a little bit more back into contention as Pierre Papi retires and the pits becomes our 5th retirement of a race. But yeah, I almost feel like he needs to start using a little bit of his ERS, otherwise he's going to become a little bit too detached from that leading 2 cars.
I was just about to say, actually, fair play to Pape for still racing, even though being so far behind, and then he went into the pits and retired. So, yeah, that has just gone out the window. Oh, and Amoy pits. All right. That looked like a pretty late call. Maybe he only just got the call for the alternative strategy. Samba also pits. Let's see if he holds off the Ferrari a little bit. No, he doesn't. And it looks like Amboy has gone onto the wets once again. Okay. So it's wets once again. It looks like it's going to be wets right until
Samba's on Inters.
Samba's on Inters. All right. Interesting. Very interesting now.
Yeah, I mean, if there is better weather coming, and LRB's gone on to Inters as well, if there is better weather coming, it is a bit perplexing as to why Amboy's gone on to another set of wets, although maybe he's right and the guys on Inters are wrong. I guess we're going to find out here with Samba, but yeah, this is a really intriguing part of the race here, because this could make or break Amboy's race. If he's gone onto the full wets and it's going to start drying up a bit, that's his race kind of ruined.
I can tell you now, right now, he's gaining quite a lot of time on Samba. Right now, the gap was 5.5 when he came out the pits, and it's going up to 6.3 by now, 6.5. And it looks like Samba and LRB have made an, I don't want to say horrible strategy call, but it looks like it really wasn't a good one. Look at that. Look at the time they are losing. It looks like Amboy has made the right strategy call. Let's see what the top guys do. They stay out, latest pits. Obviously, he has to, cover the undercut now. It's going to be interesting to see where he comes out in comparison to Amboy. But I think Samba
Inters
and Inters for latest. All right. Maybe he got baited as well. Roby also on Inters. Still, though, Samba is losing so much time in comparison to Amboy. Maybe they all just got a bit bamboozled by Amboy because he pitted. So obviously everyone thought he was going to go on Inters and then try to cover that strategy. And Amboy makes the undercut work beautifully. He flies past Latus on the main straight. And now Latus is going to realize Amboy is on wets while he is on Inters.
Yeah, and you can already see the time that he's struggling. He's not really making up at the moment. And of course, have to get those intermediates up to temperature as well, which is going to be difficult if the track's not ready for them. So, yeah, this is a tricky time for those intermediates. Roby having a huge moment on his set. Maybe the Inters is the right call long term, but right now it's looking difficult. And the more laps that they struggle on these Inters, the more time they're going to lose, and the less that they'll benefit from that gamble.
I tell you what, though, if that was a planned bait from Amboy, then fair enough. That worked beautifully then. No pit stop from KK or Kieran so far. Kieran sets the fastest lap of the race, so it seems to be getting quicker. Roby picks up a 3-second time penalty. It seems to be getting a bit more dry or a bit quicker out on track. It looks like the rain has become less as well. So The question is now, for how much longer will the wets be quicker than the inters? That is the big question. Because right now they still are. Latest is still losing quite a lot of time to Amoy. But, you know, if the inters then in 2 or 3 laps time suddenly become quicker than the wets, then I doubt that Amoy is going to have that gap to pit once again and stay ahead of Laters.
Well, comparison at the moment for you, Amwoy and Kieran in the 1 minute 22s on wet. Samba, the first guy to go onto the Inters, 1:33, 5 seconds slower. So, yeah, it's still not there. But I get the feeling, though, that not only is Latest losing time to Amwoy, I get the feeling he's not coping as well with his Inters as Roby is behind him. I think Roby's starting to close that gap.
Yeah, he's coming closer, but... Yeah, I got, like I said, if that was a plant bait by Amwoy, then fair play. It has worked beautifully for him because everyone fell for it. Everyone went into the pits and went onto Inters. I'm actually pretty sure that Latest thought that Amwoy has pitted onto Inters because obviously he couldn't see. He just saw Amwoy pitted, so he probably thought, yeah, all right, it's definitely going to be Inters. It's not going to be another set of wets. So he decided to pit onto Inters as well to cover him. Gustav now goes onto Inters. It looks like he doesn't have the information from his teammate that these Inters are not really working at all at the moment.
Just going to see what Roby's lap time is because he looks like the one who's probably the quickest on the intermediates right now. It's a 1:32. Yeah, it's still not near the wet tyre pace. Yeah, right now Amwoy has done a brilliant strategy call, which has fooled an awful lot of people. I guess what Kieran and Keke are hoping up front is that they can get it to the point where they can go in intermediates, and with the margin they've got at the moment, they can afford to sort of stay out and just keep going on their wet tyres, which are probably getting a little bit worn now.
Yeah, Amwoy still has got some catching up to do if he wants to make the undercut work on the top 2 guys. 16 seconds in between P2 and P3. That is a lot, and then there's, yeah, it's a really big gap. Let me just quickly look at the gap to leader. Yeah, Amwoy is 30 seconds behind, but to be fair, you're losing quite a lot in that pit lane because just it's so long at the end. You really are not allowed to go to deactivate the pit limiter until you nearly into turn 1, basically.
Yeah, and look how much time Gustav gained as well over pit stop because he stayed out a few laps longer on the wets. He's gone on to Inters now, but because he stayed out a few laps longer, he's right with Roby and Latest, which are not 2 cars he was that near to beforehand. So he. You know, and maybe he's called it at the right time. Kieran and Keke stay out. They still don't think it's ready for wets, and the evidence would suggest they're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a reason to switch as long as the wets they are on right now still feel good and are not that one. They can just stay out. I'm just curious if they can make it to the end on that one set of wets because I don't think they can. Otherwise, I think Amwoy would have stayed out as well.
Yeah, Amwoy will be hoping that it stays this wet for the rest of the race, because if it does, he's in a really nice position here. I'm actually going to look at Amwoy now because he's coming up to the first of the drivers who haven't pitted yet in Diogo Silva, and he'll want to try and clear him as quickly as possible because there's a big gap after that to the group of 5 cars that are all very close together on the road. But Amwoy should be quicker than Diogo Silva right now and will want to get this move done as quickly as possible. He does not want to get stuck behind him.
Yeah, the Ferrari with the number 66 about to pass the Haas car then. I think it's not going to be too difficult. Drivers are pitting now. Giroffu and Simon both in the pit lane. Diogo Silva is staying out. Giroffu goes on to Inters. Simon goes on to... I don't know. And no, Amwoy can't get past. Amwoy can't get past. Look, he hasn't got any ERS left. That's really going to cost him. Simon goes on wets. All right. Now we'll have the direct comparison in between those two guys as well. Latest, though, he's going to get past those guys. He's under pressure from Roby behind, though. And they're still going to get these guys. We've got some lag involved. A lot of chaos going on at the front there. It looks like Giraffe, though, is staying ahead of all these guys. And now Simon is in the middle of that train on full wets while everyone around him is on inters. Oh, and Giraffe, no. Ah, it looked like Robbie was ghosted, but he isn't, sorry.
Yeah, the two Mercs and two Red Bulls lying astern here, and Simon will want to clear them. Yeah, that's an important move for Amboy, but Simon's really in a bad position right now because he's on the better tyre, but he's got a group of people in front of him who are not, and they're just going to hold him up. Right, so Kieran pits, Keke stays out then. What's Kieran going to do is the question. But because right now the wets still look quicker, so is Kieran going for another set of wets or is he going for inters? He's going for wets.
Yeah. I'm curious, where does he come out in comparison to Amboy now? That is the big question. How much time has Amboy gained or lost? He will be ahead, I think, but look at how long this pit lane is. Just look at that. Maybe we can see Amboy coming up then. Let's go on board with Amboy. Yes, we can see him in the distance, but it looks like in total he has lost some time to Kieran. So that undercut didn't really work as much as he would have hoped to. The gap is around the same, 2.6 seconds, yeah. Didn't really gain that much.
No, he did bait some of his rivals behind him, so in one aspect it has worked. He has moved him up to P3 on the road in terms of how his, or P3 in terms of how his race should pan out once everyone pits. So in that regard, it has worked not too badly, but yeah, Kieran had some good pace on his older wets and managed to negate the deficit a little bit. I'm just keeping an eye on Simon here because he's still in the midst of his train of cars, which he doesn't want to be
picks
Kieran.
Up a penalty. Oh, wow.
That's a game-changing moment. Keke, what's Keke going to do? Keke pits. And he should, and of course, Kieran being up in fourth.
Oh, Simon tries to go around the outside of Latest through turn 9. He was pushed onto the grass slightly, and he wants to get past. He knows he's on the quicker tyre.
Keke on inters.
Keke, oh wow. Okay, now I'm really curious to see what will happen in this race. Block takes the lead for now. Let's see where Kieran is in comparison to Keke. How did that undercut affect the standings right now out on the track? It looks like Kieran is getting past. Can Amboy maybe slip through? No, he can't. And that was a purple final sector from Kieran. That probably gained him a little bit of time on KK as well. KK obviously has to get these inters up to the right temperature for now, but he's 1.6 seconds behind. And seeing how Simon cuts through those inter runners, I still think the full wets are quicker.
Yeah, we'll see how Keke copes with this. I wonder if Block's just trying to stay out until it is the inters are the faster tyre. This is a really intriguing race, and of course Kieran would have rejoined in fourth, so on the timing screen Keke would have been able to see what tyres Kieran was on and still went for the intermediate, so he must be hearing something about the weather that's made him think this is the right decision. We're gonna find out, I guess, but this is a really intriguing race now because we've got so many different strategies at play.
Yeah, it looks like the inters are working a lot better than they were at the start where everyone pitted onto them. He's only 1.8 behind. He's only lost 2 tenths. Okay, 3 tenths now throughout this lap. And yeah, I think at some point those inters will be quicker. Look at that. He only lost a tenth in total. Which is completely alright. Amboy pitted again. Amboy will go on to inters, I think.
Yeah, but he's spread in the pit lane as well, which is a really bitter blow. So intermediates go on, but
he's going to drop behind that train. Oh no.
So I think inters were the right call, but I also think a lot of drivers, Samba comes to mind, just went very early on them, far too early on them. Yeah, I think inters were the right call, but I think in terms of who's called it right, you have to say Keke's probably got the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, also Block. Block is still out on his first set of wets, remember? I
Oh,
think,
he's just gone off the road though,
yeah,
so I think he needs to get in the pits because I think those tyres are gone.
yeah, I think they're overheating now as well. KK's still not gaining that much though, so I think right now is still the time where he can pit without losing too much time. But you know, Kieran is gonna lose a lot now. Kieran is gonna drop right back into that big train of intermediate runners, I think.
Yeah, he'll be, and he could be behind Jirofu, which is of course his big championship rival. So that's a important thing to note as well. As I have to say, one driver's
Oh,
block.
block!
It
Oh,
must be so hard to
Kieran
get
stays
it
out.
slowed down. Yeah, Kieran stays out. He's probably thinking at this point he may lose less time doing that, but it depends how much this track dries. Keke fastest lap, he's probably going to be past Kieran on this lap, and he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit here. But as it Jaum is about to go up into P3, and that's kind of come out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, he just pitted 2 laps ago, and that was his first pit stop of the day. So he's just made a pretty good strategy call. Block also a really good strategy call. He's up to fourth. He was sitting in seventh or eighth, I think, for the majority of the race. Obviously, he now sped into the pit lane and has a 3-second time penalty. That pit lane speeding was really not the best thing he could have done, because that's 5 seconds at it. Many drivers have got penalties though. KK is actually one of the only 2 drivers that haven't got any pins, him and LRB. But I think Kieran is making the right call for staying out now, because I'm not quite sure if Jaume is actually going to catch those 17 seconds up to Kieran in those final 10 laps now. And he would definitely drop behind that train if he pitted now.
Yeah, I think Kieran's almost thinking he's probably knows he's going to end up losing this fight to Keke, either by penalties or just by being overtaken. He's probably got his eye firmly set on those cars behind Keke, who he's got that margin over. So, and having said that, Kieran, although the Inters are probably now the better tyre, the wets aren't that much slower. Simon is still in that train of cars in P7. He's on the wets as well, and he's not being cut adrift by those Inters in front of him.
I can actually hold the gap to latest behind, which is around 3.7 at the moment. And they have the chance to cool the tyres on the straights. Obviously, there's still a couple of puddles here and there. But at some point, they are going to wear a lot more than they would in normal wet conditions. Because obviously, they're just going to overheat, and the more the tyres overheat, the more they're going to wear out. And that might be a struggle then towards the end. Maybe he gets into puncture territory, which I don't hope for him. But that is obviously a chance that could happen. And Jaume could be then the one taking P2 in the end. But at the moment, he still holds on to the lead and got a 9/10 gap behind. So he's doing a good job.
Someone who I feel like has made a very poor strategy call here is Amwoy, currently in 11th place. I think he sort of panicked when he saw that the Inters were starting to be quicker again, but I almost feel like he would have been better staying out as well.
KK nearly lost it out the final corner. So you can see the Inters are not without any struggles either. You still have to be very careful on that wet track out here. And he nearly binned his Alpha Tower into the wall out of the final corner. That would have been it for the Italian team. But he luckily kept it up the wall. Blocked now with the fastest lap of the race. He's willing to get that P3 from Jaume. He already pulled a gap to Giroffo, so it looks like Block really has got some solid pace at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. He did a very good long stint on those wet tyres. Maybe a lap or two too long, but it was a good strategy call. Yeah, I just feel like Amwoy here probably panicked and went onto the Inters a bit too early when he probably, like I say, he was only a few seconds behind Kieran and Keke. So, if Amwoy had just stayed out on those full wets, I think he'd have still been looking at a podium. Whereas now he's got some decent pace by the looks like on his Inters, but he's a bit stuck behind Gustav in the battle for P10. So, yeah, I think Amwoy, after baiting a few drivers early on, sort of panicked a little bit when he saw the Inters were improving.
Yeah. Wasn't a good decision. Block picks up another penalty. He's now up to 11 seconds, and he's going to drop down very, very
Oh,
far.
Kieran
has just lost the position to KK. After the penultimate corner, alright, that's interesting, to say the least. He doesn't try to fire back, you know he's lost that place. KK has used basically everything of his overtake button. And now with 9 laps left, 7 laps left. Why did I say 9? 7 laps left in this race. He has taken the lead then. Giraffe counters the fastest lap of Block with a new fastest lap, and he's now caught up to Block a bit more.
We've seen how treacherous this track can be. I think Keke's biggest issue now is going to be remaining focused, because he knows that he's probably got the pace on Kieran on the inters now, and he should win this race. And with that, he may just lose a bit of focus, which he can't afford to do, because this is still really slippy out there. So Keke just needs to stay focused here, and he should have a win, but I wouldn't want to call anything at this stage, because we've seen, as you saw the other lap, that Keke's still having some moments which could be race ending.
It's still not easy out on this track. And like you've mentioned, once you've got a bit of a gap behind you and you feel like you've secured the position you are in right now, you tend to become a bit more relaxed, and that could be a big factor of making a mistake, and that could definitely lead to making a mistake, even though KK just set the fastest lap of the race now. So it looks like he still is very much concentrated at the moment. And Jaum isn't catching that massively to Kieran. So it looks like the strategy of saying, oh, Simon pits now. I think he just threw all the chances he had for points into the bin. He only had 3 seconds of time penalties. And yeah, goes on to the inters.
Yeah, but the trap position, like you say, the trap position he's lost is so much that he's not going to be able to make it back on his inters. I think his best chance for points was just sticking it out on the wets and just hoping that he could hang on to a point. It's finished. So yeah, like you, I'm a little bit confused by that one. And like you say, Jaum isn't closing in enough on Kieran for Kieran's P2 to be under any sort of threat at the moment, but you never know, it could quickly change. If it dries up pretty quickly from now on in, then those guys like Kieran on wets could still be under a little bit of pressure. Keke's at the lead over 2 seconds now, he's pulling away nicely, and I'll just keep an eye on the lap time for Kieran this lap, compare it to Jaum's lap, see how much he's gaining. 26.9 for Kieran, which is still a personal best, actually, so he's not struggling that much on the wets. Jaum 26.9 for Kieran. What's Jaum doing in response to that? Well, he's doing the fastest lap of the race, but it's only a second quicker. That's going to need to be a lot more than that if he's going to close in that gap, which is still hovering around 14 seconds.
Henry has left the session, who has retired quite a while ago now. But
we've got Gustav.
Oh yeah, fight, and it looks like Roby can't do much about that, and has to let the Red Bull go. The Red Bull was really close for a couple of laps now behind Roby, but he couldn't find a way past until this lap, where he finally got past. Simon overtakes his teammate back again. Easy move on the main straight. I'm really not quite sure if maybe Simon pitted because his tires were so worn that he was at a risk of a puncture.
Yeah, I mean, he's not been on them. He hasn't been on them tremendously long, but yeah, maybe.
And they're overheating tires now in these interconditions.
Yeah, I mean,
they were too worn, but still, even though now his chance for points are completely gone. That's for a fact. And so if I was him, I would have just stayed out until my tires would blow up, because that would have been the only chance for him to get some points. And it looks like Roby's really struggling right now. Look at that. He's about to get passed by Amoy if he's not careful. And Amoy, yeah, it looks like he just let him pass. More or less. Yeah, there goes Amoy then. Oh, wow. Well, no, it doesn't look like he's really letting it pass. He's had a little look on the outside, but he doesn't really want to attack Amoy anymore. Immediately pulls half a second in the first chicane. Gustav is on a run. Look at that. P8, and now he's right behind Laters. His teammate doesn't seem to feel too comfortable out there on track.
Yeah, later still feeling the effects of that early sort of dummy that he did to cover off Amoy, and unfortunately for him went onto the wrong tyre at the time. And Gustav's Inters are probably a lot more fresher, a lot more, probably a lot more heat in them at the moment. And yeah, I think Gustav's going to be in a good position to take P7. LRB picked up a penalty, so now Keke is the only driver who hasn't picked up a penalty and in the lead of a race as well. It's pretty impressive stuff. I think Jam's closing the gap a little more now to Kieran, but again, it's just too little too late. I think Kieran has made the right call staying out on the wets, and he's done well actually to stop him from overheating. And he's P2 will be a good result for him if things stay as they are. Giroffu might be on for P4 though, which is a pretty good save given all the issues he's had that have been out of his control.
Yeah, it reminds me of his Mexico drive, if I'm honest. But he lagged out as well very early on in the session, in the race. And then joined back and somehow managed to get on the podium in the end.
Yeah, he's on for P4 at the moment with blocks penalties. P3 might miss out on the podium this time, but I still think he'll be pretty happy with the result. Obviously frustrated with the issues that he's had that have been out of his control. Simon has got some pace on his intermediates, which is showing off. Another fastest lap from him. Gustav hasn't managed to make the move on latest just yet, so still the two Red Bulls line astern. And yeah, Aston Martin's on for some good points today. They haven't had the best of seasons, I would say, either of them, but Block in particular made a really good strategy call today, which has really benefited him. It's a shame that he has so many penalties, though.
Yeah, Block with a cool head in terms of strategy, but on the track he just made a couple of errors that weren't really necessary, like the speeding in the pit lane, which in the end will cost him a couple of positions. I think he's up to 11 seconds of penalties if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, he is. He might keep the place ahead of Laters though, because that gap is pretty big in between Laters and Marcel. Yeah, Gustav can't get close enough to his teammate to overtake.
No, he's got a decent amount of ERS available to him, but he's choosing not to use it at this current moment. Oh well, he's went a bit wide there. This might be an opportunity, but Gustav, I think in his eagerness to get a good exit, had a moment himself, so has to stay in behind for now. And Amoy's catching up to the pair of them as well, so it's interesting to see how the Red Bulls play this one, because they may come under threat from the Ferrari.
Yeah, I think many positions are more or less settled now, even though Jaume has now got the gap down to 8.5. As long as Kieran's tyres are last and don't puncture on the last lap, then it's coming up now. I think he will hold on to that P2, where the best decision he could have made then in the end to stay out on his wet tyres after the strategy error he made by pitting onto another set of wets, while KK made the perfect call by going onto the intermediates at exactly the right time.
Yeah, it's ultimately going to look like quite a comfortable win for Keke, but it's been anything but that really up until this sort of last 5 laps. It's been to in and fro in really, and he wouldn't have really called Keke for the win earlier on, but yeah, I think he actually probably pitted for the Inters at pretty much the perfect time.
Gustav is catching up now. Gustav is trying, he's getting close to his teammate, but he just can't get past him. And he's used basically everything of his ERS. Maybe now he's got the chance. On the run down to turn 4 around the outside. No, he had a little look, but he just couldn't get past. Got a bit wide now. Now he's got to be careful to not lose the place to Amoy right behind him. And the Ferrari Amoy's got 2 seconds more in terms of penalties than Gustav though, so he should be safe. But let's see where our leading drivers, KK, coming around the final corner for the final time in this race on the intermediate tyres. Perfect strategy and a faultless race from the AlphaTauri driver. And he takes the win here in Imola. And his run in Italy has been brilliant for 2 races in a row. He's finished on the podium. Now, first the second place in Monza, then the win here in Imola. And Kieran picks up P2 in the end with the right call to stay out with a slight strategic error. Then Jaum takes the final spot of the podium. Giraffu takes P4, even though he had some issues lagging out at the start of the race. Block in the end with a good strategy call in P5 ahead of his Aston Martin teammate Marcel. Aston Martin with a really good result for this race. And then we've got a spin over the line from Roby, who actually picks up the final point later, and Gustav in P7 and 8. The 2 Red Bulls ahead of Amboy. And then Roby picks up the final point with the spin across the line on penalties. He beats Samba. And that is it for this race.
Yeah, well done to Kake. Really kept his head well, made the perfect strategy call, and once he got past Kieran, it never looked in doubt. And the only drivers as well to stay penalty free. I think that deserves a lot of credit in those conditions, particularly in those early laps when we saw a lot of drivers struggling and going off the track. He kept his composure, and I have to say as well, after a few murmurs in the paddock about driving standards last week, I have to say, considering the conditions that they were in, that was actually a very, very good standard of racing, and a lot of respect, a lot of fairness given, and yeah, there was a lot of good driving tonight.
Yeah, I think that looked pretty clean to me, and shouldn't be too much to complain about. Apart from maybe the strategy for some drivers, I don't think Kieran will be all too happy with that P2. And yeah, same with Amroy, I think, who just, made unlucky calls at the wrong time. Same goes for Laters, who looked very promising at the start. Obviously, starting from pole, he wouldn't have wanted to finish down in 7th, but in the end he did. But gotta say, great race, great strategy from Block and KK. Also Jaum, like you've mentioned, basically out of nowhere, and in the end he finished on the podium. So great stuff from him. And also the 2 Aston Martins with their first proper good result in this season so far with P5 and P6. They've picked up some solid points, and those were desperately needed for the team from Britain. And yeah, Kieran won't be too unhappy though with the result in the end, because he gained points on his championship rival Giraffu and secured that championship lead just that little bit more.
Yeah, we've got one more race to go before sort of a, I don't know if you call it a mid-season break, just after mid-season. We've got a week's break after next week's race, which is in Brazil. That should be a lot of fun. Interlagos very rarely delivers a poor race, so that should be a lot of excitement. And Kieran just slightly extending that lead over Giraffu, but I still think there's a lot that could happen between now and the end of the season. And Kieran, I think ultimately might be a little bit disappointed it hasn't extended that lead by more, but yeah, he will lead the championship going to Brazil next week.
Yeah, really excited about Brazil. We probably have some solid chances for rain there as well, as we know the history of Brazil, especially in real life. We saw some cracking championship deciders. It won't be a championship decider for us in PSGL this season, because it's still 3 rounds to go after that one, but still I'm very much looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are as well. So make sure to tune in next week when we head to Sao Paulo, then once again 7 p.m. UK time. Jake, anything to add to tonight's race? Any more comments?
Not really. Just to say, but yeah, it was a really good race. Drivers did well keeping it on the road, and yeah, I'm excited to see what Brazil brings next week. And yeah, we're getting towards that stage of the season now where all the prizes are given out. So yeah, it gets more crucial, more pressure from here on in.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be back next week. So thank you, Jake, for joining me tonight. And yeah, it was Very fun. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to tune in next week. Once again, make sure to check out the other streams that are going on right now on the PSGL YouTube channel. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye and take care.